All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to VUX World. You might have noticed the music's changed a little bit there. That is a tune produced by Ben McCulloch, and myself, actually. Ben played the drums, and he put the bits and pieces in, and I had a bit of a mess around with it. And last week, I don't know if you saw, we released this as the UNPARSED theme tune, where I did, in fact, perform a little rap. Indeed, which is, was quite all right if I do say so myself. That's the UNPARSED theme tune. UNPARSED, if you don't know, as you must know by now, is what was the world's first conversational AI conference, conversation design conference. It is now the world's most favourite conversation design conference, and we have a track this year also dedicated to technical development. So if you are involved in artificial intelligence, if you are creating experiences with conversational AI, then you need to get yourself to UNPARSED. It's next week. I can't believe it's come around so fast. The countdown has happened, and we are literally days away now from UNPARSED 2024. It's at the Museum of London. The venue is spectacular. We've got all kinds of stuff going on. We've got amazing speakers, amazing content, amazing partners. VoiceFlow, the platinum sponsor. We've got Raza, who's a gold sponsor. We've got Core AI and Quick, silver sponsors. We've got Cognigy, Radiant, King's College London, Bot Jobs. It's going to be absolutely amazing. We've got immense food, immense parties planned, and you're going to absolutely love it. So the prices have gone up nearer to the time, as you might expect, but you can still save some money if you use the promo code VUXWorld. That's VUXWorld. Save yourself probably half of the ticket price, I think. So do that, and we'll look forward to seeing you in London next week. If you can't make it, I hope you can. But if you can't make it, if you can't travel, if you are overseas, then you can also join online. And the good thing about joining online is that you get access to all of the content forever, basically. If you can't be there if you can't be there live to watch it, then you get access to it afterwards. Obviously, if you're there in person, you get access to it all as well. You can watch it all afterwards. But if you can't make it, which I hope you can, but if you can't, join online. Unparsedconf.com, promo code VUXWorld, all capital letters. You see yourself, I think it's half price, 50% off. And so do that. And we'll see you next week. Cool. So that's it. Goodbye. Only joking. Today, we are joined by Hazel Savage. Hazel is the VP of Music Intelligence at SoundCloud. Now, this might be a slightly different episode to what we normally do. However, Hazel has some immense experience in AI, in artificial intelligence. She had a startup called Musiio, was sold to SoundHound, acquired by SoundHound, and it does all kinds of interesting things with AI as it relates to music, cataloging, search, and the lessons that we'll learn throughout this conversation will be applicable to you no matter what kind of AI you're working with, no matter what kind of business you're working in, and if you're a fan of music, like I am myself, then it'll be even more interesting. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Hazel Savage. Hazel, welcome to VUX World.
Thank you so much. Absolute pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, Kane.
No worries. Thank you for joining me. And we were learning as we were doing the introduction kind of, chatting before we went sort of live there, that you're literally down the road in Leeds.
We are. We're probably about 25 minutes away from each other. And now I'm sort of seeing how nice the VUX studio is. I'm kind of down.
I know. Definitely we should have done this in person. And next time we will definitely do it in person because, why not? You're only up the road. So let's definitely do that. We'll plan in a part 2 now before we do part 1. How's that?
Do it. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. And part 3, if you do manage the part 3, you get yourself an exclusive VUX cap, gold VUX cap.
Right.
So.
Well, I'm very excited about that. Yeah, I love it. Love a bit of merch.
Yeah, there you go. So thanks for joining us. Really, really appreciate it. Why don't we begin with a little bit of background on yourself, Hazel? Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, because you've got a lot of experience even before Musiio, and you do a hell of a lot of things right now. So maybe we'll start with your background and what got you interested in AI. Should we start there?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard to know how long a version of this story to tell. But basically, I got my first guitar when I was 13, and I wanted to be a rock star, obviously.
Obviously, as you do.
And, singing, playing guitar, writing songs. But then that wasn't really considered a particularly sensible career when I was growing up. But I ended up working part-time Saturdays and Sundays while I was at uni at HMV in Darlington. We've both just discussed we're Teesside folk, both of us.
Indeed.
So I think our accents are going to get stronger as it goes on. Because we'll be affecting each other, getting more and more northern until no one else can understand us. So yeah, I was working at HMV Darlington, and then I went full-time at HMV after uni, asked for a transfer down to the London store, to one of the London stores, which I did. So I worked at the HMV on Oxford Street for a year and a half. And then I was sending out CVs all the time, trying to get like a non-retail music job. And I was very, very lucky. I got an interview at a very small startup that no one had heard of at the time called Shazam.
Ah, wow.
I was about employee number 25 at Shazam, and it was pre-iPhone. So for those of us who are old enough to remember, it used to be UK only. You used to have to ring a number. You remember like the old mobile phones with an actual keypad?
Yeah.
And you have to dial 2580, which is the 4 numbers down the middle of the phone. So the company I worked for was called Shazam 2580. And you'd ring that number and hold your phone up for 30 seconds. And then it would text you back all the way back to this morning. Actually, I Shazammed something in a cafe this morning, so still a fan.
I'm still a huge fan. I do that all the time. Literally,
Yeah.
most of my music catalogue that I listen to on a regular basis comes from me being out and about. I'll walk into a shop and they've got this song on. I'll see what's that, and I'll add the artist to the playlist or whatever, add the album or whatever. That's literally, I think 80% of the music I listen to these days, if we're doing a barbecue or we're just in the kitchen chilling out, it all comes from stumbling across something, Shazamming it, and then saving that artist, and then there you go.
And that's it. What it was I was in a cafe this morning and this song was on, and I recognised it from the gym. But obviously, when you're at the gym, you can't always like stop what you're doing to Shazam something, especially if you're in a class. So I thought, I'm going to Shazam it now. I'm in the cafe. I recognise this one. And I worked at Shazam for like 4.5 years. And that was like, back in the early days of music technology. And like you say, I've pretty much worked in music technology ever since. So from Shazam to Universal to Pandora Internet Radio to BandLab Technologies in Singapore, and then ultimately in 2018 starting my own company with Musiio.
Nice. So we'll get to Musiio in a second. Shazam, when did Shazam start?
Okay, so when I always need to go on LinkedIn to look at the dates that I actually worked there, but I think I started working there when I was 22, 23, and I'm 40 now. So quick math.
What's that? So it's like nearly 18 years old or so?
Yeah, that would be it. Well,
really?
I always say I've got 18 years experience in music tech, so that scans, doesn't it? That's about right.
Interesting. So Shazam had models that were able to listen to a music song from 2007 and be able to recognize the song in 2007.
Well, so we wouldn't have called it AI back in the day because it wasn't really it wasn't based on the neural networks that we think about today. It was really it was audio fingerprinting and then like algorithmic matching. And also when I worked there, like you say, back in the 2000s, it was I think when I joined, we used to always brag because our database was 14 million songs, 14, and that was seen as a lot of material. Of course, we went in the last 18 years, we've gone from 14 million recorded songs, the entire history of music, up to about 90 million on every streaming service. So
wow.
The rate of growth is exponential. And I think that now I'd be very surprised if there weren't more sophisticated, potentially AI-based algorithms that power Shazam. Because as I say, when I used it this morning, it took less than 2 seconds to find the song and it was returned really quickly. Because the hardest part, I think, now of a technology like Shazam is not the fingerprinting and the recognizing. It's the how do you sort through 90 million results quickly to turn a result. And so I'm sure there's some possibly AI powered automation happening. But back when I worked there, sort of pre-iPhone, it was really audio fingerprinting and then basically, as advanced as we could, algorithmic matching to be able to return the correct result.
Right. Interesting. So audio fingerprinting, what's that then? That's taking what, like a segment of audio. I don't know if you know, how does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. So funnily enough, what's been really relevant when I started building my company is every other job I've had, because Musiio also used audio fingerprinting, although a more advanced version because we were building in 2018 and not the early 2000s. But essentially, the way I describe it is we take an MP3 or a WAV or any music file, and we're turning it into something a computer can read, right? Which means usually turning an audio file into a kind of a visual spectrogram. And if you think about it, like a waveform is a really simple visualization of an audio file. Like, even on SoundCloud today, you can look at a waveform and you can see where it gets louder, where it gets quieter. You might even be able to see sections of repetition. And you can see that by just looking at it with your eyes. You don't even need to hear the audio, and you can kind of see a little bit what's happening, because that's a very, very simple visualization. And so a fingerprint is really a much more advanced kind of spectrogram of the audio. It's going to include a lot more information. But when you would look at it, it's not something the human brain can translate. But it's something a computer can read and go, there's a vocal happening here, there's this happening here. So yeah, it's a really, really advanced mathematical transformation of an audio file into something a computer can read.
Right, brilliant. And so that's based on presumably the frequency makeup of the audio. Is that correct?
That's definitely going to be a part of it. And depending on what you're trying to achieve with the fingerprint depends on how much information you need. So a Shazam is a simple, we're going to tell you the name of the song and the performer. And that's, you don't need a ton of data to be able to identify that information. And then obviously at Musiio in 2018, we were wanting to tell you the genre, the key, the BPM, whether there's a vocal on this track, whether that vocal has auto-tune used, the moods of the song, the quality of the recording. So the more information you're trying to pull out, the more detailed a fingerprint needs to be. And there are various, that's part of the secret sauce of companies that use this kind of fingerprinting. What kind of new techniques have they invented to kind of read more information, and how do you do it in a really scalable way as well?
Nice. So Musiio then, that was the goal of Musiio when you started. It was to be able to catalog, map, and then subsequently be able to search on music to be able to identify those things that you just mentioned. Is it an instrumental? Does it have audio? What genre is it? Like, is that correct? Or if not, what was the idea behind Musiio?
That is correct, but the way I've always described it, and I think it's important to have this perspective as a startup founder, is I originally came up with the idea with my co-founder because we were trying to solve a really real problem, which was, back when I worked at HMV in Darlington, there was I used to put the CDs on the shelf on a Sunday night, ready for Monday morning, because all new music was released at 9 a.m. on a Monday. And, on an average week, I'd be putting out 5 or 6 CD singles. I'm even old enough, I was putting out the matching cassettes at one point. And, that was it. That was new music. Well, to be fair, whilst we're tidying the shop on a night, we could play all 6 CD singles if we wanted and go, we just listened to all new music that's released in the Western Hemisphere today. But then, I started to notice in all the other jobs I'd had, especially while I was working at a company called BandLab Technologies, when I was there and we got up to 1 million users, we started having like a song uploaded every 30 seconds. And I was like, well, if every song's 3 minutes and there's one every 30 seconds, you could never listen to them all as a human being. And I started to think around, okay, well, how many tracks are on Spotify? And, at the time in 2018, I think Spotify put out a press release saying we've got 60,000 tracks a day uploaded. And then I think they put a press release out just last year saying we have 100,000 tracks a day uploaded. Wow. And so really we came up with the idea for the technology because I was already realizing in my career in music, I'd gone from being able to listen to everything to I could hire 1,000 people and not be able to listen to everything. So I really thought that's where AI could come in. AI could be an assistant to kind of act almost as a first filter to then be able to search and to find anything we want. And I thought once we can do that, there's so many applications that we could use this for. But the crux of the idea was just, could we build an AI that could listen to music? That was the start.
Right, interesting. So it sounds a little bit like. Well, maybe we'll save that for a bit. Like, so I was going to say, it sounds a little bit like this would give you what Spotify's kind of secret weapon has always been over the last sort of 5 years or so, which is being able to understand your musical preference and then be able to find you new music that's so closely linked to what you like that you then discover new music that you like a lot easier rather than just throwing a random. Like, for example, the other day, I was listening to. I typically use Apple Music, and that's only because it comes with the EE contract that I've got. So the other day, we were driving somewhere on Sunday. I can't remember exactly what I put on. I put some album on. I can't remember what it was, but it finished, and then it started just randomly cycling through tunes, and it went from like Cypress Hill to Led Zeppelin to some other band that I'd never heard of that I wasn't particularly enjoying, and it was just so random. Then forgot about Dre come on, and it was kind of like, it was just so random. But then when I think about that with Spotify, there's a really great Spotify playlist that I play quite regularly. It's by Mark Ronson, and essentially it is a load of songs that he's sampled before, but it's all the original songs, and it's brilliant. But whenever that playlist finishes, it's always, you don't know when it's finished and when it's or not, because all the music is still carries on being exactly the same sort of style, and it's brilliant. Like, even though you don't necessarily, because I think it's still the playlist. I don't go back and save all the songs, so I couldn't tell you what they are, but I know that they're so closely aligned that it just feels like you still listen to the same playlist. So is what you were doing with Musiio would that allow you to do something similar to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the sort of the use cases of the technology that your average listener is gonna recognize most, because a lot of people do have a music streaming account. And if you think about it as well, another way is, if you're ever watching a video on YouTube, what appears in that right-hand column is based on a fingerprint potentially, or an AI algorithm based on what you've just watched. So, and what we do as well, now we're part of SoundCloud, is we've taken that Musiio technology, and we're not only able to create a fingerprint of every song, but I'm able to create like a fingerprint listening profile. So for myself, for example, the AI can go and look at the last 100 tracks that I listen to, and it can fingerprint all of them, and then it can create one generalized profile for an average of the fingerprints of the last 100 tracks that I listen to. And then when it sees something new coming in, it can either then make a decision to say, yes, this fits the kind of thing that Hazel's profile would like, or no, it doesn't. And we're using that technology at SoundCloud now to create a program that we call First Fans, which is the idea that every time new music gets uploaded via our Next Pro service, we're able to serve 100 listeners that we think would like this music. So really trying to solve that challenge in music, where a lot of music that gets uploaded just doesn't get any listeners. How do they find each other? How does the music find the listeners, and how do the listeners find the music? So yeah, this is absolutely one of the best use cases for this technology, to be able to fingerprint somebody's listening profile as well.
Yeah, that's very similar to the challenge that Amazon Alexa had. And for those tuning in that are familiar with that kind of world, as I know many of you are, Amazon Alexa had, at one point, it had something like 500,000 skills or something like that. I don't know if you're familiar with Alexa, but skills are basically like apps for Alexa. So in the same way as you've got an iPhone with apps on it, you could have skills for Alexa, which would be like third-party apps. And the big problem there is that you had all these people building these apps that some of them were great, some of them weren't so good. But their success relies on people finding them, using them, and then being able to monetize that usage. But the issue was that because of the voice assistants being a pretty high bandwidth device, because you have to talk to it and then you have to listen to it, so you can only do one thing at any time. It's not like a phone where you could have 10 items on one screen and scan through them all quickly. And so there was always this bottleneck, which was really challenging to solve, because the discoverability was ultimately the thing that led to the demise of third-party skills on Alexa. So yeah, it sounds like a very similar problem that you're trying to solve, because it's the same thing with music. Like, you can't listen to 5 songs at the same time. You can only ever listen to one. And so how do you decide out of the 100,000 that were uploaded today, which one is worth listening to,
And the other thing we say in music as well, and you just mentioned you like Apple Music, and of course there's Amazon Music, there's Spotify, there's there's SoundCloud, there's a lot of different DSPs, and in a way that differs to TV, most music streaming services have ballpark the same 90 million tracks, and so therefore the differentiator is the product, is how good the recommendations are, how good the service is. I mean, SoundCloud, we're a bit of an edge case because we have like 345 million songs, because we also have the kind of the user generated element, where anyone can upload anything. For example, on my SoundCloud profile, there's like 12 songs that I've uploaded from my trying to be a rock star phase. And they're not on any other platform. So we are slightly different in that respect. But generally, most people who are using a music service, they want to hear Adele's latest single. They want the Michael Jackson back catalogue. They want the greatest hits, or the Beatles, for example. So the differentiator then becomes how good are the playlists and how good is the personalized recommendations.
Very good. I mean, I might be a bit kind of old school and stuck in my ways a little bit when it comes to music, because when I was immensely heavily into music, I used to love hip hop, still do. And the music I used to make was hip hop. And what that meant is that I would listen to loads of different types of music because I was always looking for samples. So I had early exposure to lots of different types of music, but my true love, if you like, was hip hop. These days, since then, I listen to all sorts now, but it's all kind of rooted in those days. Like, I like classical music because I remember going and listening to classical music to try and find samples. I like reggae because I used to listen to reggae to try and find. It's all that kind of stuff. But even so, I'm still sort of like there's certain artists that I like, and certain types of music that I like. So do you know what I mean? So I'll gravitate if I'm in the garden and I want to put some reggae on. I'll gravitate to like a Pete Tosh or a DJ Andy Smith mixtape or something like that. And I kind of sometimes gravitate to the same stuff. And I don't necessarily go searching for new music. However, when that thing I'm listening to is finished, and when Spotify, typically what that does is it'll just put you into something similar. I quite enjoy that, but I don't actively go and search for it. So I don't know whether things have changed these days, whether it's SoundCloud. I imagine people probably are more interested in discovering music on SoundCloud, is it?
I think it's unique for every listener. And I think that one thing I have to remember all the time as well is, and this might be true for yourself, is we're probably not the average listener. Especially if you've ever played or recorded music, you're probably a little bit more of an intense super fan. And I know that I am as well, because like my favorite genre of music is like rock music. Like I love a bit of Bon Jovi, love a bit of AC/DC, love a bit of Journey. I'm really into my like 80s hair metal.
Yeah.
That's not really what's cool right now or what's happening on these platforms, but that's still the music that I'm going to seek out and that I'm going to listen to. But then I've got this whole other side to me. Like I say, I Shazammed this song in the cafe this morning because we do that song at the gym, at the dance class I go to, and the dance class I go to is almost exclusively modern hip hop. So now I also love that, because I'm exposed to it. So I feel like many of us have different profiles and different user behaviors depending on the situation. But also as well, there are those of us who, I consider myself someone, I quite often know exactly what I want to listen to, and I just go directly to that. I'm not often one of these, I'm not really that much into discovery playlists, but I think sometimes working in music, you have to remember you're probably not the average listener.
Yeah. And I think that some people kind of like, I don't know if it's because that I've been involved in music in the past or not, but it's like, I sometimes know the exact type of music that I want to play. I just don't necessarily know how to describe it. Like sometimes I want some sort of like Zen spa sort of style stuff where I'm just sitting and having a cup of tea, you know what I mean? Sometimes I might want some sort of like, elevator type of music, like a bit of sort of like very, very soft jazz, mellow in the background. But sometimes I just don't know what I'm searching for, So that's part of the trouble sometimes. Whereas if you had that assistant and you could just say something like, play me the type of music that they would play in the lobby of the Ritz. And then you can then go and do it, It's matching the music with the need at the front end,
And sometimes words aren't very helpful to us. Like the words that we use to describe music, you know, like I just said then, if I'd have just said, oh, I like rock music, and I'd have left it at that, you could have been sat there thinking, oh, she's a Coldplay fan. She's she's a sort of a Uptown Funk Mark Ronson fan. But, you know, I had to get more descriptive. So you knew that I was a kind of an 80s Bon Jovi fan, you know, so sometimes words aren't the most helpful. And actually, this is where you go full circle back to the audio fingerprinting. Because, you know, rather than just say, I like rock music, if I listen to, you know, Runaway by Bon Jovi, one of the early 80s hits, and we have an audio fingerprint of that, if we use that audio fingerprint to search on, we're going to get much, much better results than if I just tried to verbally describe the kind of music that I like. So yeah, we've done a nice little full circle there.
Nice. And so what were some of the other sort of use cases for Musiio then? Presumably, if you've got this kind of like audio fingerprint matching technology that can do a whole bunch of things beyond find similar music, you know, what other things is it used for?
Well, you know, we sort of built out a lot of the technology in the time, and I just used to describe our perfect clients. You know, we sold our technology to other music industry companies, and I just used to say, like, anyone with a large catalogue of music could really benefit from our technology, because it might be that, you know, you've got 1 million tracks in a database and you don't want to sit there manually and listen to each one and list out the genre and list out the vocals. You know, that's quite a tedious task. So, you know, if it's just pure metadata generation, that works well. We did used to work with a lot of sync companies, you know, so they might have a database of 50,000 songs, and the client gets in touch and says, yeah, we're looking for some music for a new whiskey advert, and we want something that sounds, you know, that's in the style of X or the style of Y, or, you know, something a bit like this. And then, you know, we'd be able to do fingerprint based search to be able to say, all right, well, let's have a look in the catalogue, you know, for anything that has a similar sound. And you know, rather than having to search 50,000 songs manually, you know, in under 2 seconds, we can tell you either, yes, you do have something suitable, or no, you don't. And then that can get you on the path to, you know, a custom writing job, or, you know, just licensing something that you already own. So we worked with a lot of sync companies. So really, yeah, and a lot of playlisting, a lot of curation. So I always just used to say anyone with a large catalog could benefit from our technology. And then, you know, we started to roll out new features, and we've got another one that we've sort of made available to all our clients this year, which we basically call I think time stamping and segment select. So the idea being that you could drop any track into our technology, and we'll be able to tell you the timestamp for the best 30 seconds of that song. And I say best, that's a little bit objective, but the idea that, you know, not every song you just want to start from the intro. It might have a, you know, 2-minute long intro before anything really happens. It might have a very different style intro. So, you know, and again, we use this technology to generate the kind of the feed on SoundCloud, where you get like a 30-second little sample to see if this is something you like. And again, that's the AI identifying a really powerful 30 seconds within any song. So yeah, these are the kind of things that we can do when we have this type of fingerprinting and this type of automation.
Brilliant. That's great. I was gonna say, before you suggested that, that's exactly what I was thinking of. That'd be perfect for those little sample sort of clips. So it sounds as there's a load of parallels here with what you're doing and what many other companies are doing in lots of different areas and industries. Like, for example, Netflix does something very similar when it comes to its thumbnail generation. So it catalogues and scans every single frame of every single program and film that's on the platform, scans every single frame, and then it tags it automatically with a whole bunch of stuff. In your case, it would be background, guitars, music, etc., blue shirt, you know, and it'll kind of tag all that kind of stuff. And then they have this searchable tool where you can just go into there using natural language, and you can just say something like, I need something that is from Wednesday, that is gloomy with rain clouds in the background, that shows the main character holding an umbrella. Maybe you'll get something, maybe you won't, but it'll search the whole thing and it'll pull you out the thumbnails that we will use to then create that thumbnail, you know.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think Netflix is absolutely world class when it comes to this type of search and recommendation technology. It's so fast. And it's that kind of, you watch this so you also might like, that's really effective, I think, on their system. And I'd also heard, and I don't know if this is true because I don't work for Netflix and I never have, but aren't those thumbnails also sometimes customizable to each individual account?
Yeah.
So, for example, if they think that you're more likely to engage with a show with a female lead, they're going to include the thumbnail that's got the female star in the show. I'd heard that as well.
Yeah.
And I think they play around with, we know that if it's this thumbnail, X amount of people are more likely to watch it than if it's this thumbnail. So they're getting really advanced with that kind of data tagging as well.
Oh yeah, they run multivariate tests like that constantly, and it even goes deeper than just male and female. For example, if you've been, let's say, for example, if you watch a lot of stand-up comedy, when it shows you a thumbnail for Good Will Hunting, you're more likely to see a thumbnail with Robin Williams on it than you are Matt Damon. If you've been watching a load of films with John Travolta, for example, then when it shows you the thumbnail for Pulp Fiction, it's more than likely going to include John Travolta rather than Uma Thurman. And so, it's crazy. And they don't just leave it at that. They test it, so they'll test it all the time. They're running multivariate tests all the time. And they'll tune it for which one kind of performs best. Because for them, for Netflix, their interface is the thumbnail.
Yeah.
Because that's all you've got, Yeah.
But
there's other parallels from listening to you describe Musiio. There's parallels in terms of kind of like business data as well. So a lot of the people listening to this podcast are working on kind of enterprise AI applications where they're working with large organizations, helping them be more productive and helping them improve their customer experience. And a big part of that is surfacing information that a business has for their staff and also for customers to access it. And so there's the same kind of principle happening across businesses at the moment where they're figuring out where's our data, how do we then ingest that data, and then how do we make it searchable and findable using AI, basically,
Definitely. And I think this is one of the best use cases for AI as well, because, you could have 100,000 songs uploaded every day and, you might have the next Billie Eilish or the next Ice Spice or the next big hit in there, or you might not. But the fact that you can't listen to them all means that process is no longer possible to do manually. And, I do think as well, I love that the music industry has become a place where, it's so much more egalitarian in terms of who can create music. Like I'm speaking to you now on a MacBook that's got GarageBand built in. I've got a phone right here. There's any number of apps. I could just lay down a beat and record something and have it uploaded to SoundCloud this afternoon. I love that music creation is more accessible than it's ever been, but it did present a challenge to the industry that there's so much music. How do we even know what we've got, right? Because the gatekeepers are no longer there. The power has left the record company and it's now in the hands of the distributors, isn't it, basically? Well, it's and that's a sort of a whole nother Easter basket, because I think there are still a lot of people who put a lot of stock in signing to a major label. It's still seen as a career goal and as something aspirational. But then you also have a lot of artists who are just going fully DIY, right?
Yeah.
And to build their own career, and they're looking at the tools that they can use for themselves, and they're going, I'm going to sort out my own publisher, I'm going to sort out my own distribution, I'm going to do my marketing using such and such tool. And so I think we're at an exciting time in the industry, because all this stuff is happening in real time.
Yeah, and it's following the same path as has kind of been followed in other spaces, hasn't it? Similarly, in terms of writers and publishers and journalists, it used to be that getting on to, BBC or in America like CNN and stuff like that, like getting onto those networks was the big kind of career goal. Whereas now that's become very fragmented, and actually independent journalists are doing far better than some of the kind of big established networks. And so it's kind of heading that way.
And it can kind of be a bit of a mess for a while, right? Because, at first all content just seems to be freely available and people go, oh, how are we going to make a business out of this? But yeah, if you think about it, the career of a journalist 20 years ago was, how do I get hired by the Times? How do I get hired by the BBC? And now there really isn't anything to stop anyone who wants to write or create journalistic content from just hosting their own WordPress site, throwing up their own website, and creating commentary. And especially in the music space, like when you think about music blogs and music reviews, that's no longer gate kept by a few public, come with its own challenges. It's like, then it becomes, well, how do we get people to value this? How do we get to monetize this? And even the shift itself, right? From people that were used to, okay, but I got paid a full-time salary and I wrote for this one publication, to now I'm also more like a gig worker, where I'm maybe writing for several publications and myself. And how do I make sure that that's a sustainable career? So, and I think that's, journalism and music have that in common.
Yeah, definitely. What do you think about AI generated music then? Because that seems to be the next thing to, not that I'm necessarily so close to the music industry, but AI generated content is the next big concern for marketing people. It's the next big concern for government. It's the concern that, when I say concern, it's not really a concern. It's I mean concern as in a topic of interest,
Yeah.
and music seems to be very similar in that there's AI tools now that I was on one the other day, actually. You can literally just describe the type of tune you want and it'll just make you a beat,
Yeah.
and there's been loads of examples of like Drake's voice being cloned and now then put onto to music. So what's the impact in your estimation of AI generated music at the moment?
I mean, I don't think we even fully understand the full impact yet. And I think we're getting there. And I think I always like to, and this is perfect that we were just talking about journalism as well, because I actually, and there's no way to say this without sounding a little bit arrogant, but I have a Google alert set up for my own name. So that if anyone ever writes about me or the company that I built, I get a notification. And I got a notification the other day, Hazel Savage says, and I clicked on the article and it was talking seemingly about Musiio, but none of the information was correct. It wasn't describing what we did accurately as a business. And then there was a quote attributed to, said by Hazel Savage that was something that I've never said. And I was like, I'm 99% sure that this is an AI generated article, and it's the source material. It's conflated me and my company with another music tech company, and it's used our name, but it's describing what they do. And there was loads of other sort of tells, like sentences that just human beings generally don't write, a lot of repetition and a lot of sentences that aren't really sort of fully formed. And I was like, oh, I'm pretty sure this is an AI generated article, but that's the risk. It looks like I might have really said the thing that it's saying, and it's relatively low stakes because it's, music tech, and, I'm not saving lives over here. But I did end up having to find the person who'd created this website and created this article, and I messaged them on LinkedIn and I was like, this information's incorrect, can you remove it? And they were very good. They just took it down straight away, which was fantastic. But I thought we're going to just see more and more of this, where, that was an article that was generated that was completely incorrect in all of the things that it said. And I think we've seen that in written content, and that's become quite advanced in written content. I think what we're seeing now with music, and I always used to say this because when I started my company in 2018, generative AI was still really bad. Like if somebody played me some music that was like, an AI wrote this, I'd be like, sounds rubbish. Because it just didn't, it just wasn't very good. It was like, it sounded like somebody who just can't really play. And although the challenge is in the last 5 years, that it's come along so far that now when you hear it go, that's pretty spot on. Like, so, not all of it maybe, but some of it. And I think that creates a new challenge. The other challenge is how much AI generated music is being created every day, because if human beings globally were able to generate 100,000 songs to upload to Spotify, what does that look like? 10x, 20x, 100x when those are AI generated songs? That number could become, unmanageable from a data storage perspective, and even harder from an AI filtering and curation perspective. If that number, it goes from being 100,000 songs a day to 1 million a day, that's like a computational problem. And then also, so that's one of the challenges with generative AI. And then the other part that we're seeing play out in real time is that a lot of generative AI models have been trained on music where the correct rights or permissions were not obtained.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally, as someone who's had their whole career in the music industry, I have no interest in tearing this industry down or breaking its rules or trying to, take value away from music and put it into technology. And I think most people that I speak with, that I work with in the music industry, most of us believe that if you use some music, you should pay for the use of it. Like, I didn't think that was a controversial opinion. However, it's happening in real time that some of the big tech companies think that training an AI on copyrighted material falls under fair use. And these things are happening in real time in the courts. And I think we're watching it unfold in front of our eyes. But I just think we're going to have to see how it plays out. I would really like to see, if people's music is used in a model, that they get some sort of compensation for it. But there are two very strong sides on that argument. So I think I'm a bit of an observer in this particular instance.
Yeah, on the one hand, I definitely agree with you, which is that if you're going to use copywritten music to train an AI model on, then absolutely you need to pay something for that. It's just exactly the same. I don't know how they've got away with ingesting all the books that they've ingested. Right. The Hollywood Writers Guild has been on strike because they're not happy about the fact that, AI models may have been trained on film scripts that they've written, and is that then going to lead to other films being created that are based on those films, if not in pattern, if not in context, then at least in pattern recognition and what have you. And so there's definitely, and then also the image generation models, a lot of them, let's say, for example, I forget the specific example now, but as an arbitrary example, if you asked it to do something in the style of Picasso, it would then do something in the style of Picasso, but then there's a signature in the bottom right corner. So it's like, how do the models know to put the signature in the bottom right corner unless they've been trained on signed images?
Yeah, they've seen them. And there was that funny use case as well, wasn't there, where the Getty Images logo, like
really,
that grey bar that's sort of in the 2/3 there, kept showing up. And it kept showing up because they obviously scraped a ton of images off, Getty's website where they're all watermarked. And then the AI has gotten confused that it thinks that this is somehow an integral part of the image. So it starts replicating it. Like, I'm trying to show a photo of the royal family, and every single photo that it's been trained on has the grey Getty's bar. So it includes that in the new output. And that was one of the most blindingly obvious cases that the AI had been trained on that copyrighted material. And I think there's been a real struggle though as well, because, AI generative work, whether it's images, text, audio, it's at such a fascinating point because it can do such interesting things. And it's academically very interesting to go, wow, a completely AI generated image. That's just, academically super impressive. But we haven't totally figured out what we're going to use it for. And we haven't totally figured out how we're going to remunerate the people whose works have been used to create it. And I think one of the things that I know scares the music industry more than anything is most streaming services have previously paid out on a pro rata model. So if a record label like Universal owns 38% of all the music in the world, they're probably getting about 38% of all the revenue from, say, Spotify. However, that's based on 100,000 songs uploaded a day. What if that number suddenly is 10x and it's all AI generated? And therefore, now based on a pro rata model, the real artists are literally going to receive less money, because if it's paid out on a pro rata model, they're now a minority because the systems are flooded with so much AI content. And I think that genuinely worries a lot of the record labels and the services, because the systems that are set up are now able to be hijacked by AI-based content. So I know that's a huge concern. And then how even more annoying, if not only are you now paid less because there's so much AI content, but your music was used to train and create that other content. You know, I can see where the frustration comes from the music side. But I do think one of the biggest challenges is that music and tech just yet still don't find a good way to work together. And I think, you know, it's that's one of the biggest challenges we have in the music industry as well.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, I would have thought that most of the music on Spotify would be independent. If there's 100,000 songs being uploaded every single day, Universal can't be churning out that much music.
No, definitely. And I think then you're sort of looking at the stream counts as well. So it might be 100,000 songs uploaded every day, but I forget the stat exactly, but it's something like 45% of all music uploaded never gets a single play.
Yeah.
Right. We can sort of discount that instantly. But then you've got your Taylor Swifts and your Ed Sheerans who've got, you know, billions of plays. So well done, they've got 1 billion plays. So they get paid out as a kind of a pro rata of streams. And I think that's something that people have misunderstood a little bit about the music industry as well. And as I say, we've launched a new model at SoundCloud that we call fan-powered royalties. But, you know, say theoretically, I go on to Spotify and I'm that 80s hair metal fan, and I pay my $10 a month and I listen to nothing but the best of Bon Jovi, Crossroads. And I listen to that several times in a row. Bon Jovi doesn't get my $10. My $10 still probably predominantly goes to Ed Sheeran, Taylor Swift, and all of the other artists who are getting the billions of streams. So there's kind of a push in the industry as well to reinvent those economic models, because I think people have always assumed incorrectly that my $10 would go to the artist that I listen to, and it doesn't. It's all put in one big pot and then paid out pro rata based on streams.
Right.
And so, you know, so therefore, if I was the only person that listened to the Crossroads album twice that month, he probably wouldn't even get a cent, despite the fact that I've paid $10 and not listened to anything else. So going with these sort of artist-centric models where your money goes to what you listen to, that's a way that the industry is pushing and revolutionizing to make sure that artists get remunerated correctly as well.
I like that model better. The kind of concern that I would have as a fan is that because everything now is exponential, isn't it? I'm going to sound like an old man here. Everything is exponential. It doubles and doubles every year. And so music's the same. So much music gets created. With AI in the mix, so much more will get created in exactly the same way as loads and loads of images get created, loads of photos get taken, but then you add AI to the mix and all of a sudden that exponentially grows. Same thing with writing. It used to be in early 2000s, everyone had set up a WordPress website, all of a sudden everyone's a writer. There'd be loads of rubbish out there. The good stuff obviously surfaces to the top, but then again, now you've got AI doing a lot of the writing. The article that you referred to earlier on is evidence of the fact that AI leads to just absolute rubbish and incorrect content. And so for me, the way we use AI internally, we use image generation a lot, but we use that predominantly for hero images on articles. And those articles are read in the first 2 weeks. Some of them are read longer term, but some of them are more flippant. And so you don't really need to spend a whole load of time and effort on the image because it's not going to be around for very long. However, that still technically sort of devalues that image and devalues the need for that image. We just need something to put there because the CMS needs an image, you know? Yeah. And then it's almost like there's a risk that you get to that place with writing, which is where we just need to send this tweet out. So just write something. We just need to post something on LinkedIn. So it doesn't really matter what it is. Just write something, get ChatGPT to do it. And all of a sudden, your writing gets sort of... diminished, so to speak. The value of that goes down. And the same thing potentially could happen, and I think will happen because it's happened in those other areas with music, which is because AI can create music, the value of music potentially goes down because anyone can create anything by just explaining what they want and get a song out of the end of it. And so I'm just curious about what your thoughts in terms of, like, do you think there'll be a flurry of rubbish enter in the music industry, and the good stuff will still then
Yeah.
rise to the top? Or how do you think it'll play out in terms of like the creativity and all that sort of stuff?
I don't know for sure, but I've got a few thoughts on it, which is, I was very, very fortunate. We do a podcast at SoundCloud, and the first person I interviewed for it was Judge Jules, DJ
Nice.
Judge Jules.
Nice.
And I asked the judge what he thought about, the proliferation of AI music. And he said, and I actually am inclined to agree with him. He thinks that, say, there's gone from 10 songs a week to 100 songs a week. He still thinks you see the same number of tracks that are a 6 or a 7 out of 10, but the 9 out of 10s and the 10 out of 10s are still as rare as they ever were. So in that way, the judge is kind of agreeing with you in that he's saying that really rare talent hasn't become more prolific. There's a lot more sort of chunky weight in the middle ground, right? Because anyone can create a kind of a 6 or a 7 out of 10 type track using all of this automation. So does that mean that talent is still rare and valuable? Hopefully. And then the other thing it got me thinking about as well was, I've done a couple of panels this year with a friend of mine called Simon Franklin, who was the composer for Avatar's Way of Water, the new film. And, he says that obviously he's as in demand as ever as a composer. When James Cameron wants to work with someone to, create music for a film, there's no lack of work on his side. But where he thinks it's going to change is in that, in that sort of where he came up in the world of music writing, which is the several levels below, where you're just writing an automated couple of ditties for a TV show that's, it's a Love Island that's on every week, or, it's background music for a YouTube video. That's the stuff that's likely to be automated because it's slightly less imperative that it's something wholly custom and completely different. But we've seen this many times in the creative industries where things change and the landscape, the economic landscape changes. And, I even hark all the way back to, probably back in the 1800s or something, when every tavern had a piano player. Right. And that person was paid every night to come in and play tunes for the drinkers. And I imagine that probably the horror for those people when recorded music was invented, the wax cylinder, because they probably went, well, we can just set the wax cylinder going and it'll play music all night. And, we got a one-off cost for that, and we don't have to pay Bob to come in every night and play the piano. And he only shows up half the time and he plays things wrong, so I think technology, even all the way back to the first time that music was recorded, has evolved. I think it's more our responsibility as an industry to make sure that we're still trying to capture the creativity and we're trying to remunerate the talent correctly. And we're living it in real time, which is both exciting and terrifying.
Yeah, it's it's the same thing as, like, we used to have carrier pigeons and now we don't because we have the internet. And so things evolve, technology changes and things evolve. And actually in most industries, in most cases, if you look at who gets the most benefit from AI, it's actually the people in that given industry that actually perform the best. So in the call center agents that have AI tools, it's not the people who just turn up for the sake of getting paid and going home that actually benefit most. It's the top level people. The real best agents are the ones that get the most benefit from it. It's the same as, like, if you think about graphic design as well, generative AI, you'd think, well, generative AI is going to just change graphic design forever and there's going to be no more graphic designers anymore. And yeah, maybe it's going to affect those rubbish graphic designers because now I don't need to get a graphic designer to go and do me a hero image from my website because I can just do it with generative AI. But the really good graphic designers are going to be the ones that are going to be able to leverage those tools to create something even more special. Same thing with, writing. The rubbish writers are going to just use a chat GPT or whatever to do the writing for them, and it's still going to be rubbish. But the really, really good writers are still going to write, but they can use AI to enhance and give them some more ideas and be more creative. So I think that music may have a similar sort of effect, but I agree with you that definitely those entry-level kind of music jobs, I think, are going to be difficult to find. And that's where people are trained. That's where they learn the craft. That's how they kind of get a foot on the ladder. And when it just becomes as easy as writing a prompt for your background music, it takes that away, you know?
And I think that's what my friend Simon Franklin was worried about, that, you know, if he was coming up in the industry now, would he have got the same opportunities that he got as a composer 20, 30 years ago? And I think those are the things we have to wrestle with, that we haven't quite figured out, because, you know, are we going to miss out on some of those 9 and 10 out of 10 tracks and composers because there were no opportunities at that lower level, you know?
Yeah. But having said that, it also, I think everything creates opportunities if you are open to it. I think that the natural reaction to everyone when something new happens that's potentially disruptive is to bury your head in the sand, deny it and say it's not going to affect me, or to be super concerned and scared and wonder what's going to happen. And that's happening in every industry as it relates to AI. However, the flip side of it is, imagine, you know, I'll talk about hip hop and rapping earlier on. Imagine if you're a wannabe rapper, you can't make beats, you can't make music, you don't know anybody in the industry. Now, all of a sudden, you can go to Sound B or whatever it's called. You've got a beat in 5 seconds, and you can even just use your phone to record yourself, and now you can put out your raps. Let's say you're a guitarist, you don't have a band, but you can play the guitar. You could quite easily have AI generate you the music, sans guitar, minus the guitar, and you play the guitar on top, and now you're able to showcase what you want to do. Or even, you know, there's all kinds of areas like that where you can use AI as a jump start. It's exactly the same as what a good writer would use ChatGPT for. It's a jump start. It's not the be all and end all. It's just something that gets you going, gives you an idea, gives you a place to start, and then you kind of turn it into what it ends up being, you know.
And you made me think of something as well there, which is, you know, which I think is important. So we've got the Musiio by SoundCloud blog, which we've had ever since we started the company at Musiio, and we post sort of like data insight stories. You know, we use our technology to analyze. I think we've got an article coming out this week where we're looking at Taylor Swift and how, you know, she's done sort of parodies, as it were, of the guys she's dated and their music, and we're going to use AI tagging to see how accurate she's got it, you know, fun little data stories like that. And when we first started the blog, and we have a full-time in-house writer, he does a great job, Will Betts, but when we first started, we were just using royalty-free images for our header images because we didn't sort of have the scope and the budget. So we were going to things like Pexels, and we would just, you know, it's like one time we were doing hit prediction, so we just got royalty-free picture of a crystal ball and put that up, and it's actually a little bit funny now when I look back at how cringe and professional some of those articles look, because now we use a really good full-time graphic designer and you know, Steve at Ogre Studios, and we basically, you know, email him the spec and the brief, and he comes back with a creative original piece of artwork for us. So I think it's also, I never do down these free tools because everyone's got to start somewhere. And then I think, you know, when something starts to take off, as the Musiio by SoundCloud blog has, we've been able to reinvest more and better images and better articles. So I think, you know, there's the potential for that trajectory as well.
Very much so. Very much so. Nice one. Well, Hazel, this has been absolutely fantastic. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, I could go all day and all night, I think, talking about this kind of stuff. It's really.
And I think we need some sort of like Teesside get together.
Yeah.
You know, where we just Teesside solves it or something like that.
Yeah, we need to do that. I'm surprised at how many people there are in kind of like the Yorkshire area that are so interested in AI. Like, we did a meetup last month, was it last month or the month? It was last month. Oh, was it last month? I can't remember when it was. Anyway, we did a meetup at some point, a few weeks ago, and it was great. It was about 50 odd people there, you know, working in all different types of AI. And the more I sort of like, I don't know, the more people I'm meeting these days, it's like, oh, I live in such and such in Yorkshire, I live in, you know, Skipton or whatever. It's like, oh my God, what's going on here? Yorkshire's taking over the AI scene.
And I love that, because I built my company in Singapore. I used to live in Singapore when I built Musiio. And back in 2018, when I started an AI company, nobody cared. No one was interested. It was so impossible to get anyone to pay even the slightest bit of attention to what we're doing. And in the last 12 months, I've never had so much interest in people wanting to talk about AI. So I'm seeing a real explosion in it as well, and that's a good thing.
Definitely. Well, next time, as I said, we will do it here in the studio for part 2 when we do this next. Definitely.
Love it.
Appreciate it. Hazel, thank you so much for joining me. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you all for tuning in. And if you are not at UNPARSED next week, I will be sorely disappointed. unparsedconf.com. Get your tickets, promo code VUXWorld, and you will save yourself half price, 50% off. See you there. Thanks so much. Bye now.